grand finale, minus the fireworks and the balloons, but lots of enthusiastic dialogue and experience here. Your moderator, or the session's moderator, is Harlan. And Harlan is Harlan Smith. Sorry, didn't want to give you a last name. It's Harlan, everybody. And as he indicated, Harlan is with Cleveland State University. He also, in the state of Ohio, for the public in higher ed universities, they have an organization called the Ohio International Consortia. And so there are 14, the 14 institutions are represented in that consortia, and Harlan is the current president of that consortia. So Harlan, do you want me to say any more? Okay. Harlan is also the designated school official for Cleveland State University in his capacity with the International Center. And that, the acronym is DSO, or the initials is DSO. The DSO, for those of you who are in business, I think this is a critical point. The Department of Homeland Security designates and requires, if you're an institution of higher education that is going to sponsor or enroll international students, you must, mandated, have a DSO who has gone through the federal training, who is authorized under Homeland Security to be the conduit to the federal regulations and to make sure that all of your international students are compliant, that the DSO has tremendous responsibility within each institution. So if you hear people talk about, those students or these students are just coming from everywhere and no one knows who they are or where they are, that's really not accurate. So Harlan will discuss more about his role, but as he moderates, this is an excellent panel. They all have been in excellent panels. But I wanted you to just go for it and have dialogue, because there's lots of knowledge sitting right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Can you hear me back in the back? I have one of those teacher voices, but I'm under the weather, so I don't know what you can hear. So yes, I'm a DSO. I'm the principal DSO for Cleveland State University. And I have 10 on my campus in different parts of the campus. So there are people in admissions, people in the English language program, people in my unit. So I want to say 10 years ago, I really didn't care what the government was doing locally. I didn't care what employers were doing. They didn't care what I did. We had limited interaction with the Immigration Council, people like Susan and so forth, and her colleagues in Vinita. But the world has changed, and so we are now becoming much more synergistic and much more collegial. And I think that's a good thing, because I'm an educator. I'm also a helping professional. Once upon a time, I was a therapist. So I think it's really important that we help young people be successful. And so that's kind of how I get up every day and think, okay, I have kids to take care of. I don't have children of my own, I have pets, but it's taking care of the college students. So without further ado, would you mind if I just started with introducing yourselves to the audience?
Vinita. I'm Vinita Mehra. I lead the global education practice at the law firm of Kegler, Ritter. And what I do actually is I work a lot with universities who are expanding globally in terms of student recruitment, study abroad programs, structuring collaborative deals with universities abroad like China, India. And the role we play is mostly on the structuring side, identifying key legal issues, the limitations, restrictions for those collaborations. And a lot of time universities forget that even though they are not-for-profit in this country, when they go abroad to do their collaborative educational programs, they are not a not-for-profit in those countries, so there are definitely tax issues that come up. So I love doing what I do. Just as Harlan said, it's very enjoyable to being a lawyer, working with the academic people, and then working with the students. I get to see a very fresh perspective of things. Sometimes we got to take out a legal hat and put on what we say our academic hat and look at things from an academic perspective. Sometimes it's difficult, but because they're very focused on the legal issues a lot of times. So I enjoy doing that, and thank you, Lauren, for this opportunity to be a part of this panel.
Yeah, I'm Tom Hopkins. I recently retired as the head of HR for the Sherwin company after 35 years with career with them. We had gone during that time from mostly being a domestic company in the Americas to now being a fully global company. And what that means is we have both employees that operate in other countries, but also we are increasingly attracting and retaining employees that are from other parts of the world, particularly in areas that we've already heard identified, research and development, IT, engineering, a lot of the STEM programs here. And we've had to develop a competency in a process for bringing in international talent. We are a Cleveland-based and Ohio-based company founded there in 1866, and we're celebrating our 150th anniversary. And I think I'm here on this panel today to kind of give a practical experience of how this can actually be done, and maybe to dispel some of the stories, some of the fears, and some of the myths associated. It's not that it's not hard sometimes to do, but it's also not impossible, and in fact the payoffs can be pretty tremendous. I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that a Sherwin gift card for Christmas would be a wonderful thing, and we still have 1 or 2 good painting days before Thanksgiving, getting your house spruced up. So that commercial, I can report back to my folks that I encourage you to use the best paint that there is.
Hi, my name is Susan. Can you hear me? There you go. My name is Susan Moore, and I'm an immigration manager for Information Control Company. If you were at an earlier session, I work with Rick Ritzler, who is our Chief Talent Officer, as well as Rob Twitchell, who is our Vice President of HR. I manage ICC is an IT consulting firm. We have approximately 600 plus people. Out of those folks, 45% fall in my lap from an immigration standpoint. I manage everything from F1, STEM, to H1s, TNs, green cards, the whole gamut. We have a very large program. We're excited to be here because we have a very good F1 program in the CPT, OPT arena. We are a company that brings folks in, trains them, and we want them staying, and we want to invest in them. We are not a global company. I have worked for larger global companies here in the Columbus area, so we are invested in staying not only in Ohio but into the United States.
Thank you very much to all 3 of you. And I'm going to plug something. So you've heard throughout the day. Is LJ in the room? Yeah. So thank you again for this lovely facility and this lovely partnership. So you've heard the why. You've heard the what today. This is some of the how. And so I think this is really important because you have experts here, and between the 3 of them, they know how to do the linkages. They know how to, Tom and I were talking earlier, we all live in silos, even within our organizations. And so the siloing is complicated. But I come back to what I said a moment ago, that as a helping professional, as an educator, I've had my time in life. Now it's their turn. And so I think it's really important that we work together to make this possible for students. So how many of you know basic F1 student regulations? Raise your hand. So there's a pretty good sampling. So when I was talking with Lauren, I said I wanted to do just kind of the basics that we talk about and repeat over and over and over every day. So the general rule is that international students can work at jobs related to their study, but it has to be governed by someone like me. I have to say, yes, it's okay, or no, it's not, or sometimes we're talking with employers to put the pieces together to make the regulations work for the student and the employer. So yes, it is true. I control what they can do, what they should do. We're not talking about widgets, we're talking about human beings, and so often people don't do what they're supposed to do, or they do what they don't do what they're supposed to do, and then they ask for forgiveness, and immigration doesn't work that way. So there's a lot of oversight, there's a lot of hovering that we do, and even then, sometimes we don't get it all done. I think it's important to be very, very clear about something. So we're talking about employment, and we're talking about training, and we're talking about experiential learning, because the immigration regulations allow those things, but they don't allow those things for all students at all times. International students cannot, and I repeat, cannot be employed on demand, nor can they work at will. So there's a process. Now, if they want to work on campus, that's kind of at will, but we still have to do bits and pieces to make sure that they maintain their status. They can't work more than 20 hours a week and so forth. But planning and timing are very important. And because we are talking about millennials, a lot of things are last minute, it seems. That's one of the characteristics of that generation. And so that's what I'm about to disclose to you, is that putting aside orientation, arrival orientation intake at the beginning of the semester, I have 3 full-time staff people that spend the majority of their time beyond those activities helping international students figure out how to navigate the employment, training, experiential learning nexus, or monitoring it. Obviously, I have a very large student population. Immigration regulations that changed in 2008 and again in May 2016 means that I have to monitor international students who are no longer matriculated at CSU and who are no longer necessarily down the street, but I have to monitor their time in the U.S. and their employment. So that's another 572 international students on my 1,500 student plate. Look, what did I do? Employment pathways, these are specifically for F1 students. So there's pre-completion optional practical training, optional being the key word. There's pre-completion curricular practical training, curricular being the operative word, and then post-degree completion OPT, optional again being the key word. And that's for Susan as an employer. So what I will say for those of you in the room who are employers, you got to get to know people like me. People like me have got to get to know you, because you have to understand where we are bound in boxes by regulations, but I have to better understand what your needs are, or when you're dealing with some of our students, so that we can be colleagues and figure out how to move this together. And Lauren, these are going to be on the web. So optional practical training. So in a pre-completion sense, a student can come to me and say, I want to do an internship. And then I have to help them facilitate it because they want it. And then it gets back to timing, and it's going to cost them money and so forth. But it doesn't cost the employer anything. That's really important. And I think if there's anything that I can leave the employers with today, is that you can interview, using Susan's words, you can interview, you can screen, you can offer, conceivably hire an international student. It's not going to cost you anything. And now the way the regulations have changed, that could be up to 3 years post-completion, post-degree completion. So that's a really good thing for employers. Now I know you're afraid of the regulations, and I get that. But whereas once before, years ago, it was leaving college, university, leaving a graduate program and wanting an H-1B immediately, that's nobody's perspective anymore, because H-1Bs cost money and F1 OPT doesn't, in an employer perspective. This employer, OPT approval does require immigration service review and approval, and it costs the student, but it doesn't cost the employer. This is the bane of my existence. So Wednesday, I spent all day, I had 3 major curricular practical training crises. So, and it's because people don't understand what it is. They think it's employment authorization, and they think it's on demand, and I want it. And that's not what it is. It was never conceived that way. It's supposed to be experiential learning training, and yes, if I authorize it, then a student can be paid to do it. But it's something that has to do directly with the curriculum in a pre-completion sense. So the training has to enhance the curriculum, and that's why we have all this push-pull. Students will come in and they'll say, I want CPT, and I tell them, no, you can't, because you don't have anything in your degree plan or degree program that facilitates that kind of training. And then they get mad and, slam the door and all that stuff. The CPT that we do authorize, and we do a great deal of it, but that's why I want to become Susan's new best friend, because her company and the gentleman that we heard earlier partner with universities. So we need them to tell us, you got to modernize your curriculum. You've got to embed co-op into your curriculum and so forth and so on. I can't make that argument on my campus, but they certainly can. CPT is beautiful because it doesn't cost anything to anybody. I do it in my office working with a governmental database. So that's one of the reasons why the whole world wants every international student to have curricular practical training. So one of the challenges that we have currently is that we had a change in regulation in May 2016. And so if you look at that very last line, they can work for 3 years potentially with you, but there is interface between the student and the employer and people like me. And so now it's not sponsorship, it's not required, but data sharing is. The employers have to complete a form, they have to disclose a training plan, but trust me, that's a lot better than paying for an H-1B. Whoop, I think. No, you're fine. No, that was the last one, so it's not gonna hurt anything. So that's kind of the DSO overview. And I'm not gonna belabor this because this is not an immigration seminar. So I'm gonna go directly into the conversation because we wanna get through these questions and then we wanna give you time for questions. So I'm gonna start with Susan. Is that okay? So Susan, you're a global mobility management professional. Please explain what global mobility refers to in a business organization.
From a business perspective, global mobility is really having businesses throughout the world in one sense. Also, global mobility is utilizing multicultural employees. In our company at ICC, we have we utilize a lot of people from a lot of different countries, anywhere from India, Syria, China, Ethiopia, all over. So from our perspective and a business perspective, I guess it is a two-way thing. If you've got, if you're a global company such as an IBM, you're going to have businesses here and you're going to have businesses overseas. And if you utilize an F1 and bring on somebody to train them, they can go and be put in different businesses all over the world. We're ICC. Again, like I said earlier, we are here based in the U.S. We don't plan on going offshore at this time, but we bring the global mobility in its sense to our business.
Thank you. Now, you said something really important there. So you're kind of looking at your backyard here.
Yes.
You're not worried about this binational movement or a movement of people.
Correct.
You're
We
bringing
bring
talent.
them here,
Yeah.
and we invest. Basically, we invest in those people. We are not a company that wants to invest, whether it's F1. We do H1s from F1.
But you have a plan for that.
I'm sorry?
But you have a plan for that.
We do. We have a very robust program at ICC, and our goal is truly to train the person, to build them up, get them into our clients, which are, some of them are global, some of them are throughout the U.S., and really just be representatives of ICC. So we are willing to put in the money. And F1 is, OPT, CPT, that does not cost us any money. But once we do bring the person in, we do, as Harlan was saying, now with the OPT, the STEM and all of that, the person has 3 years. Well, we automatically, when that person comes in, we automatically will put them through what they call, and I'll talk very high level, the H1, and it's a cap case, and it happens once a year. And when somebody comes in from an F1 standpoint, they have 3 years, they have 3 opportunities to be able to go through a lottery and get onto an H1. We also offer in our area, it's very, there's a lot of criteria to it, but we can also offer someone coming in on an F1 CPT, OPT, start off in a green card process.
Now, I think what Susan is being modest and she's not telling you is she has, they, the company, they have a strategy of how they take an F1 student, maybe one of my students, and how they bring them in and how they strategically plan their immigration life so long as they're employed by ICC. And I used to do what Susan does, but I did it for Mayo Clinic, which is the big competitor of Cleveland Clinic. So we looked at physician talent in the same way that you're looking at IT and so forth. And so we had an immigration plan for every physician that we hired. And that had to do with patient care and research and so forth. So that's very pleasing to me. Would you say that you bring in most of your talent from universities and schools in the U.S.?
Absolutely, all of them.
All of them.
We work very closely. We work from an F1. We work very closely with a lot of the quite a few colleges here within Ohio, and some outside of Ohio. But we do have a collaboration. We work very closely in collaboration with University of Cincinnati. We've done some work with Ohio University, and some other companies here within the Ohio region. So we do. It's interesting. We do bring some folks in that are currently still in India from an H1 perspective. But if you were in the earlier session, we don't tend to have to seriously recruit a lot. Like, we don't use the monsters. We don't use the career job boards very often because we have built such a strong community from an immigration standpoint that most of our employees come in as referrals from other employees that work within our business, and which is great. And so that's just really how we kind of go through it.
Thank you. So we're going to, just because of proximity, we're going to go to Tom, and then I have a question for Vinita that's going to take a little more structure. So Tom, you finished 35 years of Sherwin-Williams, and so from your expert perspective, do you see Ohio businesses as underutilizing international talent?
Well, my sense is that there are a lot of misperceptions about how to actually make that talent work. Anybody from the INS here?
Raise your hand.
All right, so we'll keep this a secret. Somewhere about 45 minutes ago, there was somebody at Sherwin's office from the INS having a cookie and a cup of coffee, asking us again why we needed to hire international students and why we would not hire American students. And our answer is always very polite and patient. In one is that there is a mismatch between supply and demand, and that fundamental mismatch is an important issue to deal with. Secondly, from a strategic standpoint, we have IT operations in KL, we have them in Latin America and the like, but there are certain things that are really important to us from an intellectual property standpoint that we think we want to have reside with us in our Cleveland offices. And so we strategically make decisions about how do you shell those things, if you would, things that are common knowledge we can outsource, other things we want to have in here. And what we have simply found is that despite utilizing the other monster boards and other recruiters, national recruiting, that we can't find the volume among what would consider to be the normal pool. So we made a strategic decision about 7 or 8 years ago to actually begin looking at different international groupings. And like Susan, once you have a reputation established as being a company that is friendly to international students, that word gets out there. Now, friendly can be defined in a lot of different ways. Some of it is in support of the various legal actions and activities. A lot of it is just plain understanding the anxieties and the issues associated with the uncertainty. Imagine if your life is all dependent upon one of these mysterious lottery picks sometime over the next few years, and you're having to try to build a life around that. So you have to have individuals that are willing to understand some of these anxieties that come along with the students or the graduates that we hire here. We found it has been a competitive advantage for us. So like this morning, we're not going to go into a lot of detail about how it may work, but we believe that many companies just simply don't understand that there is a system and a process for doing this. And it's like any other process. Once you put some standardization to it, you can manage it pretty effectively. Sherwin has a continuous improvement culture. We're very strong in Six Sigma, Lean, and other types of disciplines that are out there. So once we began this journey, we actually began looking at all the ways that we could, if you would, lean out the application processes. Susan, you've probably done that as well. And what we have simply found is a lot of the misunderstanding and misperception is just that, and that there's a way to manage this, and we would encourage other companies to take advantage of that, not in our backyard, of course. But the reality is that these are terrific employees. Oftentimes we have some different cultural issues in terms of what they would like to do once they do get their green card and things like that. But we'd rather manage through that issue than having to hire substandard individuals to fill our jobs.
Thank you very much.
That answer your question.
Thank you. So just to give you an example of numbers, so in Northeast Ohio, we all have regions in Ohio. So in the NEO region, we have about 5,200 international students. And they all want to work. They all are aggressive and interested and hungry for jobs and training and so forth. If you take North Ohio as a whole, going all the way up to Toledo and Bowling Green and the smaller campuses all the way over to Erie, you're looking at about a total of 7,500 international students. So if you look around Columbus, it's a much larger number, and so forth and so on. So what I'm saying is you have talent. You have talent on your doorstep, and you have talent at your fingertips. So Vinita, now I have a harder question for you. So what can institutions of higher education, what can these folks do to integrate, Warren's word, integrate. What can they do to integrate their strategic plan to advance student recruitment?
That's a very good question, and actually from my experience working with other universities, I've seen some things really work well, and some things the universities just don't think about it. It just comes to them as an after fact. I mean, we live in a flat world, especially we're dealing with, as Harlan said, with millennials. Everything is social media, everything is accessible. So the more the universities can have international students, they can use that as a tool for their marketing purposes. Because, for example, when we talk to students in India, they say, hey, when they look up a website of a particular university, and they can see the breakdown of the students is 6,000 from India, 10,000 from China, it sort of gives them a comfort that there are more Indian students in that university. Why is that? Oh, we are welcome in that university. They must be doing something right. So actually taking your own resources of attracting students here, then using that as a marketing tool to even attract even more students is a very easy way to do it. So you've got to have that as a strategy. The other aspect is that sometimes universities overlook how are you going to use your alumni base? You have all these foreign students who are coming here, and then they spend about 4 years. They come for a full degree program, as we heard from Rick, and we heard from a lot of people this afternoon. Most of these people are coming here for a full 4-year degree program. And when some of them go back to their house, so they go back to their country, and they are the ones who can be the biggest advocate for the universities to attract even more foreign students. We have seen examples where universities have invested in brick and mortar offices in those countries like China and India, just to get their alumni base engaged back with their university. And that's a great strategic move. It is a costly move because you're going to get into a brick and mortar office in some place, but you are making a constructive step towards engaging them. And I think it was one of the Rick's slides this afternoon, you got to have presence, physically in those countries to have brand ambassadors. A lot of times the strategy that is used is having these agents who are supposedly independent or recruitment agents works for a short term, but if you want a long-term strategic plan, you may want to start thinking of investing in having some kind of a physical presence in those countries so that you truly have your brand ambassadors there. And being a lawyer, I do a lot of business work too. The rule in any business is that when you get into diversification always leads to good investment, success or strategy. It's a great strategy for good investment. So when we look at some of the statistics that Harlan was saying, and if you've been paying attention throughout the day, just this year, just in Ohio, we had about close to 10,000 students, and Lauren can correct me, foreign students, out of which maybe 6,000 came from China, about 2,500 came from India. It's a big disparity, but in that disparity, there's an opportunity. So which means that there should be some strategy put into diversification of what we call education gateway. If you're going to set up a gateway to attract students, you want to diversify that gateway, because sometimes the mindset is, oh, the Chinese students, they are the ones who come, that's where we're going to spend our time and effort and energy on. And then the other group of students, which is a minority, maybe the Indian students or students from Saudi Arabia, are sometimes overlooked. So the more you diversify your education gateway, it kind of helps you to integrate it much better in terms of your international student recruitment strategy. And I personally believe the one which is the cheapest and not that costly is getting your alumni engaged. I have family members and friends who have come to Ohio, studied here, and go back. When I go back home, they actually and I didn't go to school in Ohio, but when I go back home, they will arrange a dinner of their friends and family, say, hey, somebody's here from Ohio, she still loves the Buckeye football, let's meet her, I just by default become a brand ambassador for Ohio, even though I'm not pretending to be one, So using your own alumni base can be a great strategy to try to integrate into your policies, and this has to be across the board. It has to be a firm-wide policy for university. Sometimes we see that certain departments of university will engage their alumni, but some other departments will not be. So it has to be across the board, and that really helps in having a great integration programs for student learning.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to change it a little bit, because I know Lauren's looking at me because of time and questions. So the question that I have for you now, oh, I lost it. Here we go. I lost the question. No, it's for all of you. Oh, here it is. So the question that I'm going to ask of all three panelists has to do with, because they have different perspectives. In their perspectives, what do international students bring to a company, a global brand, and then clients? And I think we're going to start with Susan.
I think from a company standpoint, I know being in an IT industry, the talent, you've heard it a few times times today. The talent for, that we're looking for, it's just not getting taught in the schools. And that's why it's so important that we're collaborating, companies are collaborating with higher education so we can bridge that gap. International students are, we do hire a lot. They bring a lot of talent. They bring in the STEM background. They bring in the IT background that we are looking for. And I think, just from a business perspective, the value add that they have, that we are not really able to get so much in the talent pool here in the US.
So that's the benefit, the value added is what you're. Tom, what about you? You have a different worldview.
Well, certainly we have issues that have to do with how do we hire in local regions, whether that's China, India, Latin America, and we focus a lot of attention on that as well. But I think that the biggest change that is made within our four walls, if you would, in Cleveland, Ohio, is in addition to the talent we hire, and these are really bright, gifted students. I mean, I don't want to characterize or mischaracterize, but typically speaking, immigrant talent has a even stronger level of motivation for achievement. And again, that's not to try to mischaracterize that other folks don't. It's just that that they understand the opportunities that exist within this region, within this country, a little differently. What we've found is that even as we walk the hallways and see individuals in our cafeteria, one of the unintended consequences of doing this is that our diversity, and not just racial diversity, but really cultural diversity, has changed a lot. I think it's made us a better company when we have to understand 15 different dialects of English, and it's an interesting way to begin managing a business that we have there. But for us, I think what it's really done is it's kind of strengthened our employment branding awareness and perception among all of our employees that are there when we begin to see a much different composition of employees that walk our halls and work together every day. And as you're aware, millennials don't like offices. They like common space. They like to be able to share ideas. And our ability to have that type of interaction really has enhanced our workplace to make it even a better place to work. I mean, obviously, it's all about the deliverables and the talent that gets involved with that. Code has to be written. Applications have to be developed. We get to be the best paid company in the world because of the technology and the research that we bring. But the other benefits that come along with it just can't be overlooked.
Thank you. Vinita, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, if I have to say it in a sentence, what immigrant talent brings, they actually become an engine or a tool for economic growth and economic development. We got to see them, I mean, just to simply, if I share some statistics with you, the US Census Bureau for just the Central Ohio region says that the immigrant population, 63% of the immigrant population is in the prime age of working. That is 25 to 50 point. That's going back to Susan's point. As compared to 41% of the US born in terms of the work. So there's a big gap in skill. And that's the gap the immigrant talent fills up, which then leads to economic growth and economic development. If you see the recent American Economic Survey that came out, it actually says even in the Central Ohio region, about $11.1 billion are created by Ohio immigrant business. So that whole misconception of that immigrant talent takes away jobs actually is untrue, because they actually create more jobs. Because if you're going to have $11.1 billion put back in the economy due to that talent, you're creating economic development tools here. And so people have to look at immigrant talent and combine that with economic development. It cannot be done in isolation. It has to be done together. Again, if you look at spending power, Ohio immigrants' spending power is 13.1 billion. For every one H-1B processing that's done, there are 5 new jobs created for US-born people. So there is a direct correlation to it. So I think the biggest thing that we can take away from immigrant talent, or why immigrant talent is important, is because it's an engine, it's a tool for economic development. And we need that economic development for the growth of this country. We cannot do it by ourselves. We need help to do that. And I think Rick made a point, somebody else made a point. The foreign investments are only going to come here in this country is if we are able to show we have an engine, a tool to have those foreign investments be successful. If we don't have the skill set, nobody is going to come here to invest. And how do we create skill set when we don't have that skill set? We need that immigrant population to come here and help us to create that skill set.
I just need to add one comment on it, because I couldn't agree more. As a multinational employer and someone whose business is dependent upon a strong consumer class in order to make this happen, the reality is that workforce participation is at an all-time low. It's down in 62, 63%. And people don't exactly understand why, but the biggest issue has been something we heard earlier, the dislocation of individuals from educations that they have versus the skills that are needed, something that Eric spoke about today. The immigrant issue here really is beginning to help drive that workforce participation in the right way, and this lower workforce participation actually is costing us anywhere from a half a point to 3/4 of a point of GDP growth every year. And so over and beyond just the sheer issues of what advocacy for companies bringing in international talent and the synergies that brings, there's a more macroeconomic issue here, and that is it strengthens our overall regional and economic climates. And those of us that are involved in selling into consumer markets, when we have that type of economic development, it only strengthens our businesses as well.
Thank you. So pretend that all of these good people here know nothing about hiring international students, developing a global workforce, expanding, diversifying a global workforce. I'm asking each of you to give them a pointer, a tip, a must-know before leaving here today from each of you about globalizing the workforce, expanding their employee base.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to talk purely from a university perspective, and the business people can talk about it. I'm not sure if all the universities realize that education and training is actually among the top 10 U.S. Export services. So when we look at services in terms of exports, what is the most desirable commodity that countries want from America? And actually higher education is one of the most desirable export services that you can look into it. So immigration is one part. There are various business models that universities here in the US can use to make themselves even more desirable, because it has an impact on your bottom line numbers. As we know, a lot of public universities face deficits because of the public budgets. We know the private universities are trying to increase their revenue because, to be honest, the US education market is saturated. How do you increase that? What are some of the tools you use that? One of that is international recruitment. Because when these international students who come here, they come on full board tuition. And that helps the bottom line. The other ways you can look at, trying to increase your own bottom line is collaborations. You have a brand name, which is an American university brand name, which is actually very desirable in foreign countries. So we see structuring between universities in terms of licensing arrangements, where your curriculum, your know-how, your syllabi is provided in collaborations with universities to China and India, which also leads to exchange of students. And what you get for that is money for your brand name. We see a lot of collaborative research that happens where you bring in researchers from foreign countries who work here on joint grants and improve that workforce. So if as a university you start looking at this as a business model, it kind of helps to drive the message home much easier, because it is impacting your bottom line, it's helping your revenue, it's a win-win for both sides. It's great for the students because you're giving them opportunities, not even here, because we do have immigration issues in this country. So every student from China and India cannot come here. But a university here in the US can reach out to a student in India and China through online education, through collaborations with universities there. We hear from a lot of our clients that even though the students come here for a semester, they go back because they come here for study abroad, they try to give them the OPT, the CPT, they actually try to put them back in their subsidiaries in foreign countries. So you have indirectly impacted workforce for a US company, but for their subsidiary in a foreign country. So there can be different models that can be used as a tip for the universities to even grow their own bottom line, which is eventually the revenue system that you're looking for.
Thank you. Very important. She's saying something very important for all of us, that it's, for universities, it's a bottom line issue, it's a business model issue. It's not what Mr. Smith says, that it's holistic, it's happy, it's,
It's
you
also
know.
happy.
So,
You have to feel good about your
yeah. So, okay, Tom, what about you?
Two things quickly. One is to understand what your strategic intent is as an organization. Susan's company knows why they're doing what they're doing. We get to do as well, and it has to do with the filling the talent pipeline. Secondly, something more, maybe perhaps more practical. Don't promise things that you can't deliver on. But when you do make a promise, keep it. Because when you make those promises, then that gets around, because there's a whole community dynamic that exists that Susan talked about, and that will either work to your benefit or will work against you. So don't make promises you can't keep, but keep the promises that you do make, and it will work well for you.